Dear students of class 12th, I once again welcome you all to this online class. Today the lesson we are going to take up is titled The Scarecrow, written by Satyajit Ray, who was a very established popular filmmaker as well as a prolific short story writer. He was from Calcutta. He was from Calcutta, now Kolkata, and he is very well famous known. He is very well known in the literary world for his creation of the fictional detective called Faluda, which was a fashion, which was in consideration of the other literary traditions like the one Sherlock Holmes, which was a detective character created by Sir Conan Doyle. So, Mr. Satyajit Ray was awarded Oscar for Lifetime Achievement by Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Science in 1992. Similarly, in the same year, he won the Bharat Ratna, which is one of the highest civilian awards in India. The short story, The Scarecrow, begins with a thought, begins with a triggering question which it directs towards the reader. It asks us, it wants to know from us that if we lose something in our house, who we will normally suspect and how will we deal with it? Who will be the first one or who will be the one we will blame and why? So this in a way triggers, hints to the writer that the beautiful short story titled Scarecrow, the Scarecrow, must be dealing with some lost item or something with something like suspicion or suspect. So after that the story begins, and at the very initial stage, at the very beginning of the story, we are presented with our protagonist, with our main character, with the hero of our story, Mriganko Babu, who was a very famous and popular writer. So Mriganko Babu, while traveling, his suspicion is confirmed when he is about to reach Panagra. His suspicion was about the fault in the petrol gauge. He was sensing that there's some problem with the petrol gauge, and he had pointed this to his driver Sudhir many times, but Sudhir had paid no attention to his advice or to his alarm. So now they, while on their way back to Calcutta, before reaching Panagra, they are stuck somewhere because their car had run out of petrol, and the faulty gauge was showing less petrol in the tank than it was showing. So he becomes upset and he asks his driver, "What are you going to do about it? Now we are stuck here. Now we are left with no petrol in the tank. So what are you going to deal about it?" So the driver Sudhir replied, "I'll walk to Panagra, which is just 3 miles away, that is 4.8 kilometers away, and I'll bring some petrol from there." And to this Mriganko Babu said that, "Oh, then I have to wait all the way long. I have to wait up to 2.5 hours for your return from Panagra." And having discussed this thing, the story presents to us a very amiable nature of Mriganko Babu. Though he was very amiable, very humble, he never shouted on his servants, but this time when he's so irritated, when he's being disturbed by the thought of waiting in the car or waiting at such a lonely place for such a long time, and waiting for his driver to return from Panagra with petrol, this thought irritated him so much. So therefore he was a little irritated on Mr. Sudhir. So he asked Mr. Sudhir, can we make it back to Calcutta by 8 o'clock? or by evening. So to this Mr. Sudhir replies that we will be back in Calcutta by 8 p.m. And he again advises his servant, his driver, that you must never take such a risk on a long journey, especially when one is thinking, when one is taking such a long journey. One should check all the requirements, all the essential tools, all the essential parameters of the car or the vehicle before commencing on the journey. So he gave Sudhir some money to purchase petrol and asked him to make it as quick as possible. Then the story presents to us why Mriganko Babu is in such a situation. Why is he, or where he is returning from? The story tells us that a club in Durgapur had requested his presence to facilitate him. He was a very popular and famous writer. Therefore, that club in Durgapur wanted to honor him. So they requested for his presence, and he, though he was not able to get a reserved seat on the train, so he departed by car. And after attending the show, after attending the function, he is now coming back to Calcutta, and on the way, before reaching Panagra, his car broke down. So usually Mr. Mriganko Babu is not a person. He is very literate, he is very educated, he is open-minded, so he is not such a person who would believe in superstitions. But here, for once, he thought that if I had consulted the almanac is a yearly book which presents and discusses the many omens and other events related to a year. It's a yearly book. So he thought that if I had consulted the almanac, it would have definitely told me to abstain from long journeys on such a day. But now what could be done? So he stuck there, and when Sudhir was out of the way, he got out of the car, lit a cigarette, and looked around. He was struck in the middle of nowhere, so he looked around. So and he found that now it's the season of now it's the end of January. It's cold, it's winters, but the crops had been removed away from the fields. And to his eastern side, he could see at a distance a small hut nearby a tamarind tree. Tamarind means imli, which children are so happy to have. And he, in addition to this hut and the tree, he saw no other sign of habitation to his eastern side. But to his western side, the situation was completely different. It had a huge pond which had no water, and two huts, and in the middle of a big field there was a scarecrow, which was in a way a semblance of an effigy of human like structure, though it was not human in body and flesh. And when he looked ahead in the north side, he found that there are clouds in the sky, thick clouds in the sky, but the like point where he was standing, there was no cloud, and he was having a sunny atmosphere. It was sunny in the place where he was sitting. So he felt that though it's winters, he still was not feeling cold, and it was quite warm. So he decided to go inside the car and read some detective novel. So he picks up the detective novel he is reading, and while he is reading it, he observes that some vehicles are passing through the road. He saw two ambassador cars. One was going back to Calcutta in a lorry, and he found that all those cars, all those vehicles, they didn't bother to ask about his inconvenience, ask about his problem, what is the problem he's facing. They were focusing on their way only. They were not caring for the convenience of others. And he just thought that if I had been the person in that ambassador car, I would have done the same thing. I wouldn't have cared about others' problems, other issues. though because I'm also a Bengali, and secondly my inherent nature, my inherent human nature to not to bother about others would have been similar to those cars and lorries which just passed on the way. So again he felt that like very soon he felt that the clouds from the north have moved towards him, and he felt a little cold. It was a little breeze was blowing, so he took a pullover from his back and worn it, and contemplated about his situation and thought that what awful situation Sudhir had landed him into. His driver Sudhir had landed him into a very awful situation, so he was a little upset, a little angry about it. Then he found that he couldn't concentrate on the detective novel. He could not concentrate on the short story he could not concentrate on the story he's studying. So instead of continuing the boring detective novel, he put it away and started and took a notebook and started thinking about a plot, because he was a regular writer to the Bharat magazine, and that magazine had asked him to write a short story. So while he was returning from Durgapur after the felicitation, he was having some sort of plot was being formed in his mind. He was thinking of some plot, so he thought that I shouldn't waste this opportunity of such a loneliness, such a concentration, such a noise free like situation. So I should I should write down some points. So therefore he started jotting down some points about his plot, about the next story he's about to write for the Bharat magazine. And after that he found that he was not finding it comfortable sitting in the car also, so he decided to come out of the car and walk or do something else. So with these intentions he came out of the car. So here we will end the first part of the short story The Scarecrow, written by Satyajit Ray. We will continue the remaining portion of the story and the climax in the second part and the final part. Thank you so much for watching.